My name's Jason Bauman. I wear a lot of hats at the library, and one of them is coordinator of LGBT collections for the New York Public Library. We're really thrilled to host this program and be working with visual aids on a host of programs here and across the library system in conjunction with the Why We Fight show. So I hope you will all take a look at the show if you haven't already, and I hope you'll have a great time this evening. And also we should all thank the MAC AIDS Fund, which has been the lead corporate sponsor for the programming, exhibition, and everything that's been happening here for the past 6 months. So thank you very much. Okay. And here's Ted.
Whoa. Hi, everybody. My name is Ted Kerr, the programs manager at Visual Aids. Thank you. So on behalf of the, I'm literally standing on my toes, I'm so short, but on behalf of the board of Visual Aids and Nelson Santos, the executive director, and Esther McGowan, the associate director, thank you for coming. You are here for the personal and the political, losing parents to HIV/AIDS. This event, as Jason said, is a part of Why We Fight, this amazing exhibition that's upstairs that is not only does a lot of work, it's also very productive for these types of conversations. Visual Aids is lucky to be working with the New York Public Library for this event and many workshops that we're doing with artist members across Manhattan and the Bronx, and that's really amazing. And before we begin, we're going to hear from Jeffrey from Iris House, and he's going to tell you a little bit about Iris House. We felt that it was very important to have this conversation and make sure that it was rooted in people who are doing related work. So, as some of you may know, Iris House saves lives through the comprehensive support, prevention, and education services for women, families, and underserved populations affected by HIV/AIDS and other health disparities in safe, family, self-centered environments by passionate, professional, and culturally competent staff. Iris House, as again many of you may know, was named after HIV activist Iris de la Cruz, and it was really her passion and her vision and her relationships that really made Iris House happen. So to tell us more about Iris House, here is Jeffrey.
I guess I'm short too. I didn't wear my pumps today. But thank you. My name is Jeffrey Padilla and I work for Iris House. I am actually a health educator at Iris House amongst many other things we do under that umbrella. So if anybody has worked in a not-for-profit, you know you just don't wear one hat, you wear many hats, right? Good. So as he stated, at Iris House, we do save lives. I'm very happy to be here to inform this new demographic group for me. I'm so used to going to the same old fuddy-duddy community members, engaging them to provide safer sex kits and whatnot. But I'm here actually tonight to engage you guys to the work that we do here at Iris House. So we're very lucky to be here, so thank you. Again, this is so new for me as well. So what we do at Iris House? At Iris House, we engage. Yes, we do engage. We want to engage you in our community. We want to let you know that we are actually providing comprehensive services at Iris House, and we also actually helping you to save your life from preventing you from actually acquiring the HIV/AIDS virus. By doing such, we actually have a nice comprehensive program where we utilize our nutrition program as well as our prevention program to engage people to come in through those back doors, like we say, in order to get them to learn about their status and actually become more openly to talk about whether you're HIV positive or not, because we know that's very important. At Iris House, we also evaluate the work that we do. We just don't want to be providing the beautiful work that we do in the community, but we want to evaluate everything from the minute you walk in through the doors, through the minute you walk out, whether you need an HIV test, whether you need nutritional help, whether you need housing, or whether you need any kind of counseling service pertaining to behavioral health. So we are constantly evaluating the work that we do, not only through what the feedback that community gives us, but also we have a Q&A director to make sure that we actually provide those services. We educate, yes, we educate. As you may or may not know, the funding has shrunk, but we still got to continue educating our community. Our young folks are still getting infected and affected by the virus, so there is a need for education. There is a need for us to be providing HIV one-on-ones at many of the public schools, just like any private schools. So again, we're very excited to be able to let you guys know that, yeah, we're still providing the education through the school system, even though there is no funding for it. We feel that it's very important. We have been able to go into the classrooms and actually provide them with the HIV 101, where in that essence, they learn the basis of HIV. Then they come back for a second week where they actually are engaged in condom use. And then last but not least, communication skills, because we all know that, we have to learn, teach them how to build those communication skills to when they're about to engage in sex and whatnot. Last but not least, we do a lot of empowerment, whether it's through group learning or single learning sessions. We provide those kind of services at Iris House where you come in as an individual, where the groups are not labeled as much as big as by gender, but they're more family-oriented groups where we discuss issues that either women or men are going through. And again, those are provided through a behavioral curriculum that we have at Iris House. So when you ask us why are we here and why Iris House is here today, it's because we're not too far from the work that you guys are doing. We're also here to support the work that you're doing and to let you know that, yes, we are saving lives. Whether it's through a video or whether it's through an HIV test, we have to continue saving lives. And as per today's, viewing, I'm very excited to be here. Yes, I am. I've lost my mom to the virus, and the way I was able to find out was through the means of some chaotic stuff. So yeah, I'm also here to represent that community that has lost their parents to the virus. So I'm also here for that, and it took me a lot to say that. Because a lot of people are very, served with their issues and family issues and whatnot. But if we don't bring these stories out and if we don't put a face to what we're dealing with, then we'll never end this pandemic. We will continue seeing the rise of HIV infections throughout our young people, and they're getting younger. It's not like before where you get that 30-year-old coming in. Now you get someone who's younger at the age of 16 who's HIV positive and also having opportunistic infection. So I made a commitment to now put my face out there, because I feel that if we don't put the face, then that we can find no relationship into the work that we're doing. And also I feel that Visual Aids, along with many other agencies, are doing such a wonderful work to break the stigma. And it's about breaking the stigma, because if we cannot break the stigma, we will never see funding in this community. So once again, we would like to thank you from Iris House, and again, we would like to continue our collaboration. I've left some information outside at the front table, so if you guys are interested in finding out what we're doing, please do so. Please pick up one of the How to Save a Life empowerment toolkits that we have actually promoting at Iris House. It's our newest and latest campaign. And yes, there was another campaign called Keep It 100 in New York City, which I work for in the Listen Up program, by the way. But this is the other campaign, again, because we want to save life. What happens when you're HIV positive? How do you fit in our society today? Do you stay at home? Do you go to work? Or how do you manage your life skills? So again, this campaign is about folks who are HIV positive. We want them to come forward. We want them to educate themselves. We want them to re-educate them on life expectancy, and also for them to break that stigma that HIV has pretty much circled around us for many decades. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeffrey. It's my pleasure to introduce the moderator for tonight, Sarah Schulman. Sarah Schulman is active in many issues of the day, from women's health to LGBT rights to Palestine to censorship and anti-censorship work. From the very beginning, Sarah's been part of the the HIV/AIDS movement. She was an early reporter before the epidemic even had a name. Her novel, People in Trouble, so beautifully and powerfully documents a specific point of time in the world of HIV/AIDS that it's very, I think, a must read. Her nonfiction work, such as Stage Struck, such as My American History, and most recently Gentrification of the Mind, are all powerful books that help even those who have been through the process understand what it is to be living through these times, but it also introduces a whole world for people who are just finding themselves in this world. Sarah Schulman, with her longtime collaborator Jim Hubbard, founded The Mix International Queer Film Festival. Together, they also created the ACT UP Oral History Project, which, if you haven't visited ACT UP Oral History online, nerd out all night tonight if you want. And then maybe what you guys may also know is that Sarah produced United in Anger, A History of ACT UP, which is a film directed by Jim Hubbard. So all those things are amazing, but kind of the most exciting thing to say about Sarah Schulman is that Publishers Weekly said that Sarah is one of the top underrated writers of her time. So please welcome someone that we know is amazing, Sarah Schulman.
Thank you, everybody. How many people here lost parents to AIDS? All right. Look at each other. You're not. Is everyone seeing each other? Okay. Acknowledgement. Wonderful. Thank you for coming. And you'll have a chance to talk after. You know, in families were absent in the early days of AIDS activism. When you look at the history of ACT UP, there was maybe one parent who I even remember, Patricia Navarro, whose son Ray Navarro many of us loved. And as far as children, there was Alexis Danzig, who was sort of the pioneer person who came to ACT UP when her father, Alan, died of AIDS. But it was not something that families were that involved in the early days, right? And since then, you know, here we are. We've had 600,000 deaths in the United States, 80,000 deaths in New York City. How many people had parents who died of AIDS? It could be 100,000 people. It could be an enormous number of people. And what's interesting is that when you look at in Africa or in the global south, there's a cultural acknowledgement that there are many people whose parents died of AIDS. It's a recognized cultural experience, but in the United States, we've repressed this experience. We've hidden this experience because we don't want to accept that AIDS has an ongoing consequence in our lives and in the lives of our country and of our cities. We want to pretend that it goes away. When you look at the first 15 years of the AIDS crisis, where you had nothing but indifference and neglect from the government, and which many of us feel is the reason we have a global AIDS crisis, is because the US government was so neglectful. I mean, who are the people who are owed a debt by that government and by that indifference? It's all of us, but especially people whose parents died of AIDS, to whom the society has not been accountable in any way. So we're having this event today. It's an event that should have happened 25 years ago. But I'm grateful to TED and to Visual AIDS that they had the insight to pull this together now. And let's start this conversation now so that this silence ends and that we all recognize the consequences of AIDS on our lives as a community, as a city, as a country. So thank you for coming. I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Mathew Rodriguez. There he is. Mathew is a writer and is the editorial project manager at thebody.com. Do you know thebody.com? It's amazing. And it's the web's most complete HIV/AIDS resource. He's written about his relationship to his father, Alfredo Rodriguez, who was living with HIV and passed away from an AIDS-related illness at the age of 55 in the year 2011. Rodriguez is a proud queer Latino who engages in both AIDS and queer activism. Welcome, Mathew.
Let's take the shortcut. Hi, everyone. Before I just, okay, can everyone hear me? Okay. Before I just read off my paper, I'll just say a few things. So I was actually at a panel here on Saturday, and one of the things that the panel taught me was that it's not always the people who are on the stage who have the expertise. That expertise is not something that can be kind of, acquired like some capitalist like capital. It's anyone can have it. So as you saw, there are a lot of people who raised their hands. So everyone can be an expert, and everyone has things to share. So that's just one thing that came to my mind as I'm here to read today. Another is that a friend of mine once told me that crying is a form of healing, and there's a large chance that I might cry as I speak right now because I can feel it. But if anyone cries, I invite that because I think it's a form of healing, and this is something that we all need a little bit of healing on. So I encourage everyone to cry once today. I don't know. I encourage everyone to cry once a day, but I do. But okay. Sorry, did I press something? Okay. So this piece I wrote on thebody.com, it's called Do You Know Who My Father Is? And I wrote it sitting at my desk one day. I cried 4 times while writing it, and I wrote it because I wanted my father's story and my story as part of it to have some kind of form of digital real estate, to live, to breathe, to have value in the ones and zeros of the internet. And it's funny, as I was writing it and as I was preparing it, I realized that this is probably the only picture of my father on the internet, which is weird. He missed the selfie age. He passed in 2011, so he wasn't there for it. And so it was just interesting to me that he comes up when you Google my name now, but I think it's the only picture of him that lives on the internet now is next to this piece, and I like it that way. Before I was 22, I rarely talked about HIV. After the summer of 2011, I began working at Abbott Community Health Center. I now work for thebody.com. I am on the HIV Prevention Planning Group in the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, and I'm an active member of ACT UP. This is probably solely due to my dad. The summer of 2011, my father, Alfredo Rodriguez, moved back to New York City after having lived in Cleveland, Ohio for about 12 years following his separation and eventual divorce from my mother. After a short stint at a small apartment on the Lower East Side, he quickly entered into hospice care at Rivington House, a facility that provides an array of services for those living with HIV/AIDS. It wasn't until I was 22 that I learned that my father was HIV positive. I found that out over a phone call with my sister. A few minutes later, my mother had called me and said that she and my sister actually had not been aware that I didn't know my father's HIV status. He had moved away when I was 10 years old, and I had only seen him a few select times since then. I guess there had never been a good time to tell the baby of the family that his father had HIV. That doesn't mean that I didn't know the many other ailments that my father was facing. His was a body that had to struggle to survive. He had asthma, he had hepatitis C, he had cirrhosis, he had neuropathy, and he was a diabetic. And yet my father had always been the kind of man who just really fucking loved life. Anyone and everyone you meet will tell you that about him. He was always dancing and always laughing. I could try to draw some correlation between how under siege his body was and how much he enjoyed life, but there would be no point. My dad had always enjoyed life since he started dating my mother at the age of 14 to when he passed away at the age of 55. One of the final times I saw my dad, he was sitting in a wheelchair, having just told my sister and me that he had been declared incontinent by the nurses. He then asked us to get him 2 things, orange soda and Mike and Ike's. My sister and I told him that he wouldn't get either of those things from us, so he asked if we can get him a diet orange soda, to which we had said that we had never even heard of diet orange soda. As he walked us out of Rivington House that day, he stopped at the vending machine for M&Ms. My father was the youngest of 4 brothers, my uncles Angel, Raymond, and Jerry, and he has one younger sister who everyone calls Chavi. Being the youngest of 4 brothers earned him the nickname Tofi. It's said in Spanish, sounds like you're saying the word toffee, but with a T, soft T. Anyone who knew him called him Tofi. When he was about 10 or 11, his parents, my grandparents, divorced. They each moved out of their apartment in the Smith housing projects near the Brooklyn Bridge on the Lower East Side, but neither of them took the boys. My father and brothers, I'm not sure about Chavi, were left in the late 60s without any supervision or guidance in the middle of the Lower East Side. It wasn't until my father started dating my mother that he started to have a better family support system. I don't know when, but somewhere in that time, he started using injection drugs. My mother told me that he and all of his friends would use the same needle and tools to inject, which they kept behind a loose brick in the staircase of the building. My father's journey with drug use led him in and out of rehabilitation programs several times in his life. It was a journey that finally ended on October 13th, 2011 at Beth Israel on 14th Street. On the day of his death, he had been hospitalized for about 2 days, and all the doctors had prepared us for the possibility that this might be his final stint in the hospital. That day, I went into work that day. I got a call at about 10 a.m. from my mother that the doctors had told her to come and see him. I arrived at Beth Israel about 10:30. I was working at Abbott Community Health Center only a few stops away on the 6 train, and I was the first of my family to arrive. When I entered the room, I used the term room loosely because it was just a bed behind a curtain. I saw a body there that used to belong to my father. The body was on a respirator, and its chest was making inhuman, swift breathing movements, and its eyes were rolled back. However, the heart monitor was still beeping, though I was sure that my father had long since checked out. I grabbed his hand and told him I loved him, and at that moment, I heard that long beep that you really only ever hear on TV shows and movies. The nurse a few feet away from me said to me, "He waited for you." A friend later told me that the ears are the last thing to go when you die, and that even if a person is on the brink of death, they can often hear what is happening around them. She also told me that that it was my love that finally allowed him to pass and project him into a better place. After a short period of zombification, I called my sister, who was on her way to the hospital from New Jersey. I told her he had passed, and I still feel bad about it to this day because I forced her to continue driving through tears. At the funeral, which was held on a Saturday because he passed away on a Thursday, when he was lowered into the ground, my sister's body became all gelatinous, just like when she was a kid, and she would make her whole body go limp when she was upset and didn't want to move, and she had to be held up. Here I am, an HIV-negative young man, only 24 years old, and people often ask me why I do what I do. Perhaps my love for my father spurred him into the afterlife, but it's the love of my father that has started me on my path. I want to fight so that people like him who are struggling with drug use and are HIV positive might have a better life and not die and leave behind other fatherless children like me. I also am part of the HIV prevention field because I find myself in a unique situation. I am navigating the waters of the epidemic as a young gay man 30 years after my father had to navigate the epidemic as a drug user, both of us in New York City. Though I look almost daily for ways that my father tries to speak to me, I consider my activism a way that I can speak to my father. The first time I remember him talking to me was when, at the gathering of my family after his funeral, somehow on the table, next to all the food, there was a bottle of Diet Sunkissed orange soda waiting for our refreshment. To this day, I don't know who brought it there to the repast. His sense of humor never ceases to amaze me.
Thank you, Matthew. Our next beautiful presenter has the most aristocratic name in the queer world. It's like the queer version of the Kennedys. Kia LaBeija is a multidisciplinary, all right. Kia is a multidisciplinary artist working in photography, performance, and installation, a native New Yorker. She is an alumni of the Juilliard School and the Ailey School, where she trained in music and dance at a young age. She's a member of the iconic House of LaBeija, a platform in which she uses to continue her love of the intersections of performance, fantasy, nightlife, and community. As an activist, her work is focused on raising awareness of issues surrounding HIV/AIDS, specifically in relation to youth, by educating and creating space for new conversations through her artistic practices. Currently, she is finishing her degree at the New School. Please welcome Kia.
All right. Hello. Hi. How are you all doing? Good day. Good. This is my TV screen that I brought from home. No, just kidding. How does this thing work? How do I go back and forward?
The arrows.
Somebody show me.
I kept pressing them.
Oh, these arrows?
No, on the keyboard.
Oh, on the keyboard.
So,
Aha. Got it.
gotcha.
Everybody sigh with me. Anxiety. Oh my God. What am I doing up here talking? Okay. So, I had so many things that I wanted to say, and I think definitely what I'm going to show you definitely speaks for itself. I wrote out a whole speech about what I was going to say, and I was like, let me not forget this part, and I have to say this part, but I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to come up here, and I'm going to show the work, and I'm going to go with it, and we're going to tell the story, okay? So, this image is me and my mother, obviously. I mean, who else could this be but me and my mother? I mean, look at us. This image was taken in 1995. I was 5 years old, and this is 2 years after my mom got her diagnosis of having HIV, as well as me. There you go. For 24 years, as of March, I've been living with HIV. For 24 years. Let's get some clap. Let's clap. Let's all clap for me. So in 1993, my mom got this cold that wouldn't go away. She got thrush in her mouth and her throat, and she went to the doctor. The doctor was like, you might want to take an HIV test. Even though she was in like the 1 percentile group of people that were going to get HIV. She was a straight female with a child, Asian, and Native American. Like, what are the chances that she would get it? This is 1993. The test came back, and it came back positive. My mom's like, shit, what am I going to do? The doctor, actually, no, the nurse that gave her the test said, whatever you want to do with your life, you should probably do it now. And you should get your daughter tested. So she brought me in, I got tested, positive, the whole shebang. So for the next 10 years, my mom decided she was going to do everything in her possibility to live a happy life and to go on a journey, a spiritual journey of healing and, self-realization or whatever. So, next slide. Does that work? Aha. So, my mom became an active member of ACT UP, as well as a board member of Abbott, which is Asian Pacific Islanders Coalition on HIV and AIDS, which is awesome. And this is a photograph of me. I'm not exactly sure where or when this was. I look like I'm probably about like 4 or 5 years old. But yeah, I came with her to all her meetings, and I experienced all these different types of activism, and I was exposed to lots of interesting types of people: queer people, gay people, trans people, straight people, so many interesting people, so many like flavors of people. Everyone was so exciting. I remember specifically we did a benefit one year for Abbott. We did a piece together. We did a hula piece because my grandmother was a hula teacher. And before we went on, there was a group of these Thai drag queens. Oh my God, they were just so beautiful and so extravagant. I always wanted to be this like beautiful creature that I had been seeing in this kind of population of people that I was surrounded with. So of course, like me, I started playing dress up as a little kid, and like if you go through all my little pictures of my childhood, I'm like in all these fancy dresses and outfits, and nothing has changed. But so my mother started doing a lot of activist work. She went all around the country, speaking with women, speaking with all different types of people. And she also got back into her roots. She was practicing her Native American spirituality and doing vision quests and doing sun dances and all these like different types of things to help her healing and her own dealing with what was going on. That's so cute. Okay. So when I was 14, I went on a trip with my mom. We went to Canada. So random. Never been to Canada. We got in a car, and she was like, we're going to Canada. We're going to do a sun dance. I'm like, what is a sun dance? We're going to Canada. Okay. So we go on this long trip to Canada. It took like 4 days, like in a car, like playing music, talking, having good conversations, taking pictures, all these wonderful things. And I went with her to this ceremony. And it was really beautiful. It was a traditional Native ceremony in Canada. And, after, we spent time there, and we spent a lot of time together. And that was really the last time we kind of, like, spent time together. because when we came back, she started getting sick. And she had been in and out of the hospital for like many years. I had been in and out of the hospital like all the time. It wasn't like a big deal, but like she got really sick. And I remember we were sitting in the living room and Dirty Dancing was on. I will never forget that. Dirty Dancing, I think it was playing on repeat on HBO or something, because it felt like it was on forever. And she was getting hot and cold and hot and cold, and I had to wrap her up in this big blanket. And then she'd be like, oh, I'm hot, I'm hot, I'm hot. And then I'd have to like put her hands in water. And then finally I was like, all right, I'm gonna run a bath. So I went to the bathtub. I ran this hot bath. And she got in, and I'll never forget, her body was yellow, and I could see every vein in her body. It was purple and blue, and oh, it was horrible. She couldn't even remember who I was. Like, she was losing it, you know, and she kept asking me, is today Tuesday? Is today Tuesday? I said, Mom, today's Saturday. It's Saturday. So I left her there for a minute, and I went back to the room that we both shared, and I laid down on the bed, and I had a moment, and I said, this is it. Like, this is the end. She's dying. So I called the doctor next day, went to see the doctor, because my mom's like, no, I don't want to go to the hospital. Because who wants to go to the hospital? Nobody, not me. I don't know about you, but it's not a fun place. So took her to the doctor. The doctor says, Kwan. My mother's name was Kwan. My mother's name is Kwan, excuse me. Said, Kwan, you have AIDS. You need to go to the hospital right now. She goes, no, I have HIV. Like, no, you have AIDS now. You have to go to the hospital. So I took her to the hospital. And it's interesting because usually you take someone to the hospital and they go in, they get better, and they come out. And that's what I thought. I thought she would go in, they would fix her, and then she would come right back out, and things would just be normal again. Things would, make sense again. But they didn't. So I remember there was this one night, I was so tired because I've been dancing all day. I just started going to Broadway Dance Center, and I was in the children teen program, and I remember I had tap class that day, and I came back and I showed my mom what I'd been doing. I'm 14 years old and I'm all excited about it. That kind of sounds late for tap dancing, but it's okay. But I'm all excited. I show her what I did in class, and then I was like, oh, I'm tired, and I laid in her bed, and I remember it was kind of dark. It was really dark in her room. It was on the 9th floor of Roosevelt Hospital, which was actually right across the street from where we lived, which was kind of convenient. And the 9th floor was interesting because it's where all the AIDS patients were. And every nurse on the floor knew me since I was a kid. So that was interesting too. And they're like, oh, so good to see you. It's been so long. How are you? Oh, great, obviously. So I'm laying down, and my mom and my dad are like, you want to take a walk? And I said, oh, no, I'm really tired. So I laid back in the bed, and she was like, okay, and fell asleep. And they went, and they took a walk around the hospital, and they came back. And that's the last time I saw her. And I left, and I went home that night, and I called her on the phone, and we talked, as we always do before we go to sleep. We said our prayers, as we always do. Now I lay me down to sleep, pray the Lord my souls to keep, watch us Jesus through the night, and wake us with God's healing light. Amen. And I'll never forget, the last thing she said to me was, I love you. Good night, Kia. I said, good night. I love you. 2 days later, I came back, and she was in a coma. And a few weeks later, she died, and it was a Tuesday, which was interesting that she knew. So this piece that I have right here is a photograph of a necklace that I'm actually wearing right now. And it's my mom's favorite poem. And this is the best part of the poem. It says, when you saw only one set of footprints, it was then that I carried you. And we both had one. I don't know where hers is. I think I might have lost it, but I still have mine. And so I photographed it. And I've been doing a lot of work. I guess I can kind of talk a little bit more about that now. This is a photograph that I took on my balcony. And that's my mother's rocking chair. She used to rock me to sleep in this chair every night as a child. And I've lived in Midtown on 42nd Street for 24 years now, which is kind of incredible. And this photograph is about absence and loss, and also about rhythm, rocking chairs and rhythm and the rhythm of the city. You know, I sit outside on this balcony every day and I listen, and I always feel like the sounds of the city are kind of like the sounds of the ocean. And at night, I can hear the traffic and I can hear all the people screaming because Midtown is like so crazy now. And it always feels like that's the lullaby, that's what puts me to sleep and that's what puts me at ease. And I really do feel like this is not just like a picture of a chair, it's really a picture of my mother. Because when I go out there and I look at the chair, I always see her sitting in it. And I always tell people, I'm like, oh my God, don't sit on the chair, it's broken. I'm like, don't sit there, don't sit there, don't sit there. You're sitting on my mother, wait, you're sitting on my mom. So this famous picture that's on the front of everyone's pamphlets, because I'm famous now. This is a picture I shot. This is my room, once again, that I've lived in for 24 years. And this is a part of a new series that I started after I shot this picture called 24, obviously. I was, you know, working on some self-portrait stuff, and I specifically wore red, and I was like, oh, this is a cute little angle, and I like took this image, took this picture, and I was like, oh, wow, this is exciting. This kind of like, you know, you can really see a lot of me is in this photograph. You know, after my mom died, there was no one for me to talk to, you know. There was no one to talk to about what I was going through, you know, because I was so young. I was 14. And I remember at her memorial, Abbott actually came up to me and they said, oh, we have a group for youth, a support group for you. Come to the support group. And my father said, no. My father said, we're not going to talk about this anymore. This isn't something that's going to exist for us. I said, okay. So it's been 10 years since my mom died. Not till today, right now, am I really talking about this. Not till today, right now, can I actually like open up about some shit that's like been painful my whole existence, pretty much, you know? So high school was difficult, you know. Being HIV positive is, I mean, fabulous, I know. Yes. See, it's always a performance, always. It's all about the performance. High school was difficult because, you know, I spent so much time missing class because I was sick in the mornings. You know, I was taking these regimens of medication. You got to think about what your body's doing. Like, think about what these pills are, like, doing to your body. Like, they're so fucking toxic. Like, and I would wake up in the morning and I would, like, be like this, which I call the HIV fog, when you, like, can't really see nothing and you're like, oh, my God, I don't know who I am. You're mad dizzy. Go to the bathroom, vomit, have to go back to my room, sleep for a few hours, and then I would go to class. And all my friends are like, oh my God, Kin never comes to class in the morning. And I'm like, yeah, I'm such a rebel. I just like skip class all the time. Because I didn't want people to think I was sick and all these kind of things. And it was just painful because there was no one to really talk to about these kind of things. Nobody. It wasn't until I was 19 that I met someone else who was my age, who was living with HIV. And that's a great story in itself, because I remember I was at a church. I was 19, and I was praying to God to give me a job. I said, God, I need a job. Please send me a job. I'm so broke. I need a job. Please send me a job. The next day, I got on the train, and I ran into an old friend from high school who was like, hey, how are you? I'm like, oh, hey, how are you? He's like, you know, we're like talking. Oh, what are you up to? Oh, yada, yada, yada. He's like, I'm general manager at Webster Hall now. And I said, bingo. I was like, you looking for anyone to work? And he's like, you start tonight. I said, yes. I was like, thank you, God. I was like, thank you, God. So I started working at Webster Hall the first night of the circus party, which is a fabulous party. I think it actually is still going on, to my knowledge. I think so. I'm not really sure. But I started working there as a back waiter. I did everything at Webster Hall. Oh, my God. I couldn't believe the things they were making me do at this place. Nobody worked there, please. I hope nobody here works there. Okay. But I was sitting at the reception desk one day, and I see this bitch, this beautiful, drag performance artist. I don't even know what I could have called her. I just call her an artist because she was just head to toe in the most beautiful outfit regalia I had ever seen. And I don't know, man, woman, whatever, it didn't matter. She was just this work of art. And we became really good friends. And she was the only one that would talk to me at Webster Hall because everyone else was in their own lives and they weren't open to like talking to other people. So one day, we're standing in the back of Webster Hall handing out flyers like slaves. And we're talking, she's like, oh, like, I don't know when to get breakfast because I got to like schedule with my HIV meds and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, what? Like, you positive? And she was like, yeah. I was like, oh, me too. She was like, oh, okay. So she brought me to breakfast at 6:30 a.m. at Venus Diner in Chelsea. And we met up with a bunch of queens who were just getting off from like Barracuda and all these places. And we are sitting having breakfast. And I'm like, wow, like this is so fun. This is so great. And she goes, oh, Kia, you know, they have a house in Vermont too. And I said, I've never been to Vermont. She's like, no, they have a house in Vermont. And I was like, oh! I was like, well, I have a house in Vegas. I was like, oh my God. And I remember, oh man, I think I had a sausage, egg, and cheese sandwich, and I was sitting there having conversation with these wonderful performers who were HIV positive, who were excited about life, who just got off work. We were all so tired. And I remember having this feeling when I left, I had this big smile on my face, like, my life has begun, or like, you know, something like that. Like I was so like amped to like, finally meet my people. So one day, this person, I hope I'm not going too long, this person invited me to become a part of a house. I was like, what's it? I was like, a house? I was like, Paris is Burning kind of house, like that thing? Like, and you know, she had no idea that I had any kind of like performance background or nothing, and I was kind of like, okay, well, I'll see what it's about. So I joined my first house, started voguing, started going to clubs, and started meeting all these people out of nowhere who were positive and who did all these things that I was really interested in too, and were all in all these elaborate costumes, and I was interested in doing that too. And then it became this part of my life. It just, like, I don't know what I would be doing right now if that wasn't a part of my life. And next thing you know, I'm in the house of La Peisha. Fabulous. So I'm just gonna show 2 more pictures and then we're done. Because I could sit here and talk to y'all for so long all day. So 1 minute. The music's about to start playing. Somebody cue Beyonce. So this is the image that I did. I had this idea. I was like, I really would have loved my mother to be here so I could take a picture with her, because now I do photography and I would have loved to have a portrait with her. And I said, fuck it. Why can't I have one? So I took this picture. That is a picture of my mother from the same wedding, the first image that I showed you. And that is the floor that I cried on for 10 years over that picture that I take everywhere with me. I will not go on any trip without it. I have to bring it with me because it's her, and I need her spirit with me everywhere I go. So that's that picture. And the last image is my most recent one. And like I said, I spent a lot of time in the bathroom vomiting for years. And I decided that, I feel like I've seen so many portraits that are done about HIV, and they're so sad, depressing, wasting bodies, and like all these kind of like sad connotations. But I decided that, this is something that I wanted to show because this is something that is important. It's something that is, I've kind of kept inside of me and not really talked about for a very long time, but it's something I wanted to address. So I did this portrait and I said, you know what? If I'm gonna do these portraits, I want them to be how I envision it in my fantasy as I'm sitting there vomiting in the toilet. This is what it would look like. This is how fabulous I would be as I'm sitting there vomiting over the toilet. Sitting, lovely, perched. So I could talk to you guys all day because I feel like I'm actually talking to each and every one of you, but I think my time is running up. I mean, my time is never running up, but you can catch me later. You can check out my website. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all these kind of things. And thank you guys for being here and listening. And yes. Yeah. Everybody stand. Everybody up.
We will hear more from you in a minute.
You will never stop hearing from me either.
Good. That's how we want it. Our next speaker, Alysia. I actually knew your dad, you know that, Steve Abbott, who was a well-known gay, very beloved gay writer in our community. She's the author of Fairyland, a memoir of my father, a story about growing up in Haight-Ashbury with her father, the writer Steve Abbott, who died of AIDS-related complications in 1992. Fairyland was named a 2014 Stonewall Honor Book by the American Library Association's Stonewall Committee. Congratulations. She serves as an honorary board member for Collage, Children of Gays and Lesbians Everywhere, and is co-founder of The Recollectors, or The Recollectors. Recollectors. It's new, The Recollectors, a soon-to-be-launched storytelling website and digital community dedicated to remembering parents lost to AIDS. She's written for numerous publications, including TheAtlantic.com and Psychology Today, among others, and she lives in Massachusetts with her husband and 2 children. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you, Ted, and everyone at Visual AIDS, and thank you also to the New York Public Library for doing programs like this and hosting the exhibit Why We Fight. I worked at the New York Public Library from 1998 to 2004, and as I was going up in the elevator, I was seeing some people milling around outside a special event, and I imagined that would be me seeing myself in the future coming to this event, talking about my father and among a group of people who were sympathetic to this experience, and that was something I never could have imagined then. So it's really meaningful and powerful to be here. So thank you. I'm going to try to keep it short because I know we want to do a panel as well. But I'll just read a quick excerpt from my book. My father raised me in San Francisco in the 70s and 80s after my mom died in a car accident. He raised me as a single gay man and poet in San Francisco. And when I went away to college, in letters I learned that he had been HIV positive and he had AIDS-related condition. And so he flew to Paris to talk to me, and this is an excerpt during the trip when he flew out. My boyfriend Theo was at work when Dad and I took the train to the grounds of Chateau Fontainebleau. We were sitting outside near the spot where Emperor Napoleon bid farewell to his guard before going into exile in 1814, when my father finally revealed his news. Last November, I was diagnosed with pneumocystis. I know, Dad. You wrote me about it. It's like a really bad cold. It sounded awful. I'm sorry. Pneumocystis is a form of pneumonia, PCP pneumonia, he said. Where before I had ARC, AIDS-related condition, this diagnosis means I now have full-blown AIDS. I looked around the magnificent grounds of Fontainebleau, which stretched out across the horizon. The perfect order of the landscape was marred only by a huddle of tourists ambling by, taking pictures and shading their eyes from the severe noon sun. I looked back at Dad, who was staring intently at me with gentle green eyes. His hands were busy moving in the air, explaining. Though I knew he was talking to me, I felt as if I was far away. And I imagined myself joining that clumsy crowd hurrying back to their bus. I could see myself boarding the bus and then watching the father and daughter talking on the bench as the bus pulled away. Pneumocystis means full-blown AIDS, he repeated. He might only have a year to live, or 6 months. You have to make arrangements to graduate school early and move home, he said, now that I have full-blown AIDS. Such a strange expression, I thought to myself. Full-blown AIDS. Why full-blown? I imagined being blown away as in, wow, that really blew me away. Or I thought of an orchid in the summer, its petals expanded to their full blossom, exploding with gaudy color, sticky nectar, and scent. I pictured something blown apart, like a dandelion, fully blown until nothing is left but the naked stem. Before my father's trip to Paris, his illness was just a series of letters: HIV, ARC, AIDS, and the letters he wrote me describing the ailments that attended these acronyms: CMV blah blah itis, pneuma blah blah. No matter how much detail he provided about his conditions, these were still abstract concepts scribbled onto a page. I returned the letters to their envelopes just as I put away the feelings these letters provoked. I wrote off Dad's ailment as just more complaining. We were both such famous complainers, after all. When we lived together in San Francisco, I bought him a card for his 40th birthday depicting the front cover of a fictitious magazine, Bad Mood Monthly, with headlines like 143 ways to say I don't like it, how to make your loved ones feel like hell, and whining, W-H-I-N-I-N-G, and dining. We kept that card stuck on our fridge with a magnet for years. It was a playful reminder of our cranky natures. Calling Dad from my NYU dorm, I entertained him with tales of my miserable trip to the A&P and the walk home in the spitting rain, my arms straining from the weight of the grocery bags. He always laughed in the right places. Complaining was our inside joke. Not until he visited me that summer in Paris did I see how these ailments he detailed were not only real, but as his daughter, they were my concerns as well, each like a heavy stone being laid on a road toward his inevitable death. The conversation that started at Fontainebleau continued later that night outside an overpriced brasserie in Montmartre. As Dad and I meandered after dinner, he started to list what he'd leave me: an old PC that barely worked, his computer table, his shelves of dusty, dog-eared books, and of course, any profits from his writing. I've named Kevin Killian my literary executor, he said. He'll make sure you get anything the books could make. I've drawn up papers. Okay, I blinked at the apartment buildings and the people swarming around us. Swallowing hard, I avoided Dad's eyes. A tightness gripped my chest. More importantly, he said, how soon can you graduate? Do you have money saved to leave at a moment's notice if you need to? Shut up, I kept thinking. I don't know, I answered quietly. I have to see. My 20-year-old self was imploding. Wills, executor, computer table, graduate early. For months he told me not to worry or cry over his sickness. All that exists is right now, he told me. And then he comes to Paris. My Paris, where on a recent weekend I'd effortlessly cooked up rhubarb from the garden of my boyfriend's country house. With just a little water and sugar, it was so delicious and so sweet. I'd looked forward to Dad's visits for months. I wanted to share these discoveries with him, to introduce him to Theo and our life here. And then he comes to tell me that this life is over, that I must return home, that the time to worry is now because he has full-blown AIDS. Dad was unremitting. Dodging tourists on their way to Sacré-Cœur, he chased me around the narrow cobblestone streets, trying to hammer out this plan. I felt a great weight pressing down on me, pulling on my shoulders and chest like the lead apron dentists make you wear before taking your x-ray. I wanted so much to lie down, to unburden myself of this conversation and float away into the Paris sky. But my father pressed on, his energy renewed by determination. You have to look into this, he said, stopping me so he could look me squarely in the eye. I think you should plan to move home by Christmas. Do you think you could move home by Christmas? Okay. There was no question. Of course I'd move home. If not me, who? But my head kept spinning, unwilling or unable to absorb what all this meant. Before the introduction of protease inhibitors in the mid-90s, AIDS was considered a death sentence, and that death was a hard death, promising either physical degradation, purple lesions, wasting syndrome, mental degradation, or both. But for all the fear AIDS provoked, the nature of the disease was inherently confusing, especially as it was diagnosed then in stages. You could test positive for HIV virus without having symptoms. You could be sick with AIDS-related condition without having AIDS. Only when you were diagnosed with certain specific illnesses, like pneumocystis, did you have full-blown AIDS. Only then was death near. Before Dad came to Paris, I sought refuge in my ignorance about these stages, in the dense thicket of medical jargon that separated living with HIV from dying of AIDS. Dad was my accidental conspirator, downplaying his HIV before he showed any symptoms, insisting he didn't have AIDS when he was only suffering from AIDS-related condition, and only telling me he had full-blown AIDS when he felt it necessary. to make my plans to return home. He wanted me to enjoy my college experiences fully and for as long as I could. But the problem with this otherwise sensible plan was that when it came time for him to tell me he was truly sick and dying, I was unprepared for the reality. I tried to recount my night to my boyfriend Theo. He already knew Dad was sick with HIV, but like me, he had a hard time grasping the distinctions my father detailed. I raged at his stupidity before devolving into a puddle of tears in the bathroom. Theo lacked the intuition to understand why I had a meltdown in the freezer section of our local grocery store later that afternoon, exploding into tears because of a conflict over frozen moussaka. And he didn't know why I started crying the next day when, late to meet my father, I didn't have time to buy fresh fruit at the open market. But I need to eat a piece of fruit every day, I yelled. What is wrong with you, Alysia? I always have fresh fruit, I told him. Don't you understand? This is what I want. I don't want this other life. And my father, after he returned to San Francisco, wrote me this letter, and I'll close with this letter. July 2nd, 1991. Dear Alysia, just got home and unpacked. It's 11:20 San Francisco time. Somehow I'm sad right now, back in the same old rut of medical appointments and visits to the same old cafes here. Paris felt so much nicer to be in, but I suppose the longer one would live there, the more one would get into ruts, take all the beautiful architecture for granted, like you said. If I tried to imagine a perfect daughter, I couldn't imagine anyone better than you. I could tell you and Theo really put effort into making my stay enjoyable. Not only getting that nice hotel, but also the places we ate, fixing food for me yourself, lugging around with me to the party at the Pompidou Center. And I want you to know how much I appreciate your love. I'm sorry, too, that the state of my health is understandably a sadness for you. I think some of your irritation and grouchiness were probably because you feel bad, and you get angry that this is my situation, our situation. But it would probably be better to know you're angry because I have AIDS and that doctors haven't found a cure for it than to shift your anger onto all sorts of other things, not having time to get fruit or whatever. Sometimes I get real angry, too. I got especially angry when I had to cancel my earlier planned trip to Europe. But as it turned out, I probably had more time to visit with you than I would have otherwise. Or I get angry that I can't see like I'd like to. So I get angry and I feel the emotions, and then I realize, since there's nothing I can really do to change things, I might as well accept life as it is. Hanging on to anger only wears one out, and it's hard on those around you. And I realize there's still a great deal in life to enjoy and be thankful for. In fact, AIDS has become my spiritual teacher, teaching me what's important and what's not, and to let go of unproductive mental habits that aren't really necessary. I really like that I can now imagine you more vividly in your environment, in Theo's kitchen cooking, or sitting reading, or walking down the street, or in the metro. We'll head off to the post office now. Much love, your dad. Thanks. Cool.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Oh, nice.
So instead of pretending we're on a talk show, I think we should let you guys talk and ask Kia and Mathew and Alysia or any questions that you have, or say whatever you need to say. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much. This is better than being up there. I do better over here than over there.
Okay.
But I wanted to thank you for putting a face out there for what you guys have been through. I didn't get the opportunity to do that with my mother, so it's really sad. It really is. And what you guys have done here today has only empowered me in a different community to continue the wonderful work that we do with the AIDS pandemic is happening now. We sure don't want this for another 6 decades, that's for sure. I do take care of my father nowadays, so I take care of my life and I take care of my father's life. So I'm my father's take care because I got to get going. But I just wanted to thank you guys again because I will be taking this with me today. And best assured, when I be in Albany, May 16, I will add this as a health disparity. We have to continue educating our community, and we have to continue bringing faces out there so that the stigma and the silence can go away, and so that we can better continue communicating and doing beautiful work like we're doing in society without being judged. So thank you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know you have to go, so I just want to say something quickly to you before you do. What you were saying before when you first opened up and were talking about the need to break the stigma and put a face to this experience, I have been, in the last 6 months since publishing my book, been connecting with people who lost parents to AIDS who email me with so much excitement saying, I never met anyone who lost a parent to AIDS. I've never met anyone who knows what I went through. And what I'm learning is that so many people, when their parents were dying, felt so alone, and were often told to be secretive and not to talk about it, and this is not what we're going to be about. And that legacy of that stigma and secrecy was so heavy and corrosive. A friend and I are starting this website called The Recollectors, where we want to collect stories about parents who died of AIDS, post photos, and have it be a dynamic community, but also sort of a living oral history of these lives that were too often and sometimes lived in shadows. And so I imagine some people might be embarrassed to talk afterwards, but I did put some of my cards on the table out there, and we're really like seeking people who might, if they don't want to write an essay or be interviewed, just want to put a picture and say, this is my parent, and I love them, and I lost them, and it's unfair, and but I am out here with this now. I'm not ashamed. This isn't a secret anymore, just to break that stigma. So I just wanted to say that before you left.
All right, thank you. And just
Thank you.
I am no longer embarrassing it. In fact, it has only empowered me to continue the wonderful work that we do. But by me breaking my own fears of what the society could look at, it is being kept in a secret. Family members don't want to talk about it. It's in the Pandora box, whatever the case may be. But it's important for us to break that silence, because it's not silence just on HIV. It's silence on diabetes, silence on asthma, silence on osteoporosis, silence on many things. So if I knew, I didn't even know my mom had the virus. I planned a trip to Puerto Rico on Valentine's to spend Valentine's after 17 years of not spending Valentine's with my mother. Come to find out she was infected with the virus. So therefore, I didn't get much opportunity to learn much more about her and how she got it. But I did went on a spree to find out how she acquired it. So I am willing to tell you the story, and I'm willing to break the silence, because in Puerto Rico, this is still stigmatized so highly that people are even afraid of walking around with condoms. Wow. So I know that we're not ending this here. This is just has begun for us, and to take it to other countries and other places where stigma is a high prevalence. So thank you again.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Can I say something too?
Yeah.
Hello, hello. Oh, yes. Yeah, you know what's really interesting is, since I've really been more vocal about talking about this, I've had people that I've known for 10 years messaging me, texting me, calling me, saying, oh my God, my dad died of AIDS. I'm like, I've known you for 10 years and I didn't know that? I think it's really interesting, and I also think it's really interesting is that, you know, not only people that have had parents that have died of AIDS, but the children, like there were so many kids that were born between like 1985 and 1996 when all the drugs started happening that were not supposed to be alive, you know what I mean? And now out of the woodwork, all these stories are starting to come up, because it's like 20 years later, we're like, all right, now we're a little bit grown and we can kind of like deal with it and we can kind of talk about it. But there's so many stories, and like you said, like there's something about, you know, shame, and it has to be quiet, and we can't tell people about how my mom died, and you can't tell people about these kind of things because people are going to think these kind of things. Fuck what people are thinking. I got to talk about this shit, because if I don't talk about it, I'm going to explode. I'm going to explode, and I'm exploding right now, actually, with happiness because I'm talking about it. But yeah, I think you know, in just looking at HIV and looking at AIDS and looking at the histories and looking at, you know, what we think about when we hear it, we don't hear those stories about children losing parents. We don't hear those stories about children being born and having successful lives and being regular-ass people and doing regular things and accomplishing goals and going to college and, like, you know, trying to have sex. When you talk about HIV-positive young people trying to have sex with people, like, when I was, like, first having sex, like, I didn't know what to do. I'm like, all right, how do I tell somebody about this? Like, how do you lead up into telling somebody, like, because it makes you feel ugly and toxic and like kind of disgusting, because they might be like, oh no, sorry, or like they might get upset, or like, you know, I've had situations where like, you know, I didn't tell somebody because I'm like, oh, I don't know if I should tell them. Don't tell them. And then I tell them later, and then they harass me because they're so pissed off. And I'm like, I didn't know. Nobody told me that I had to tell you. So these conversations need to keep happening. We need to talk to young people about these things so that mistakes like that don't happen, so that the knowledge is out there. And then we're not just looking at this like it's like some disease that we forgot about. We're not just looking at the nostalgia from the 80s and the 90s and the scariness, but we're educating people, and people are knowing that people are living lives. So...
Okay.
Yeah, well, I wanted to say that I can definitely relate to what Kia said, in that people seem to reach out to you through Facebook, and it's always just like a Facebook message that comes through at some random time of the day, and the funny thing was, one time I actually got a Facebook message from one of my cousins saying that my uncle, my father's brother, is also living with HIV, but he forbid anyone in the family to talk about it. And so she just reached out to me via Facebook and was like, your uncle is also living with the virus, because my uncle was also an intravenous drug user like my father. And so like her and I have been having like a back and forth. But like one of the things that I think I've spoken with her about is like how love like itself is a form of activism, or like, because like you don't have to be like in someone's face holding a sign to be an activism. You can just like tell someone you love them, and like actively love people who are living with HIV, and that's a form of activism, because like for the longest time people didn't want to touch them, or they were, you know, like untouchables or whatever. That's like saying the same thing in different ways. But it's like when you actively love someone whose society tells us that we're not supposed to love, then that itself is a form of activism. And same thing, if you can extend that to when you love someone, like when you love them and when you fuck them and when you whatever, like that's a form.
Fuck positive women.
Fuck positive women. Fuck positive men. It's a form of activism. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Anyone want to take me out on a date?
Who else wants to speak up? Yes.
That's okay. Hi, my name's Carol. I lost my father to AIDS in 1992, and I don't know anyone else who lost a parent besides my sisters and my brother to AIDS. So, wow, it's amazing that there's so many people like me in this room. And I know that all of our situations are different, but I relate to all of you so much. Mathew with the beeping and being there when it happened, and Alysia, the term full-blown AIDS and how jarring it was, and trying to understand it, and Kia with the empty chair. I feel like I'm everyone's sister here, and I'm ill-prepared to speak, so I guess that's all.
Thank you. Thank you. This guy right here, the red tie.
Thank you all for sharing your stories. My question is directed towards Alysia, because obviously in your book, is it available on iBooks?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so Mathew and Kia present a very different generation. What was it like when your father first disclosed to you his status? And what kind of support system did you have? I mean, in San Francisco, where you should have this amazing support system, what was that like? And it's probably documented in the book, which I can't wait to read, but if you can just speak a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was born in 1970, so I think I am older than a few people in the room. But I actually didn't know when my father actually contracted HIV until I was researching the book. And the strange thing is, I can't remember if we didn't have the conversation, or if we had a conversation, I blocked it out. The first thing I could remember was a letter he wrote me, where I realized, where I was sort of absorbing that his T cell count was dramatically dropping, because he said so in the letter, and it was like it was like finally hitting me that he would eventually die, and that was in '89. But it turns out he had contracted HIV in '86. So, and at the time, I was in college. I just didn't tell anyone at all what was going on. His family was pretty removed from our life, because he grew up in Nebraska in the 50s and 60s in this Catholic family, and once he left, it was like just wasn't that close with them. And so I couldn't talk about it with them. And my grandparents, my mother's parents, were sympathetic to what I was going through, but I also felt like they were always a little bit like, oh, he's not, because he had married my straight mother, and it was like not quite the appropriate husband choice, and now he's leaving the daughter. He's, so I felt almost like they weren't surprised, but they weren't necessarily supportive. It wasn't until I moved home to take care of my dad in '92, I graduated from college a semester early, and San Francisco was undergoing this incredible time of the gay community taking care of itself, and there were organizations, Care for Caregivers at the Maitrey House. There was Cairo's House. There was also organizations like Open Hand that were delivering meals to people. And so we were, I felt that I was living in a place where there were services that we could avail ourselves of. But I started going to one of these Care for Caregiving meetings at my father's urging. And there was only one other woman in the group, and she was caring for an ex-husband, and I was the only child. And so, I felt pretty isolated in that way. But I think, in fact, I had been closeted about my father being gay with my friends, even until, with some friends, I didn't tell until he had AIDS, because it was like, okay, he's sick, he's walking around, I'm just home from college, why am I here early? Like, I had to that was the big reveal, was at that time. But I definitely had the experience of my father's friends were his family, and they would come and sometimes bring groceries or sometimes help out or just read to my father because he lost his eyesight. So there was community.
Other people? Yes, David?
First of all, I think this is an amazing panel. I lost my father in 1991 to AIDS here in New York City. Having grown up in Southern California as well as New York with a bi-coastal family, just the idea of taboo in the late 80s and 90s really hits home for me, because it is one of those things that you just don't talk about, when your father, and my father, by the way, was the cool guy, artist, writer, and it's ironic, this is pretty much the first time I'm talking about it, and yet my father actually has a book upstairs in this very library on the subject. Wow. So, even to this right now, I mean, it's still a very hard and emotional subject to talk about. So this is very warm and scary at the same time. But it's good to be here, and it's good to participate. And I look forward to talking to any other children that have experienced the same thing, or just chatting with you guys later. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yes.
I'll use this mic, but I'm gonna sit. Standing is a little too scary. I lost my father to AIDS in 1986. I was born in 1972. I read your book, and I can relate to a lot of it, but you were dealing with it as a little bit of an older person. I wasn't told that my father had AIDS. I sort of pieced it together. Ironically, I was going to ACT UP meetings not having any idea that my father had died of AIDS, because I had come out as a young gay woman in the late 80s. So I was like at these ACT UP meetings, and I started to kind of piece it together when I was about 18, and I said to my girlfriend, I think my dad had AIDS. And I sort of confronted my mom about it, and she couldn't get the words out of her mouth. She couldn't say it. My parents were sort of together. My dad was kind of bisexual. He was basically a gay man, but with my mom sort of too. So I haven't talked about it a lot either. I mean, I've talked about it a lot with people now, and it's interesting when you said if any children whose parents died of AIDS want to talk, it's like it sort of brings out the child in me. I'm 41 years old, but it's like it goes back to being a teenager. I feel like a child whose parent died from AIDS. So I love being here. I love this group. It's very warm and scary.
Thank you. We have Andy Velez over here, who's a veteran ACT-UPper.
Yes, my name is Andy Velez, and it's really an honor to be in this room tonight. There are angels in this room. I was sitting here thinking, what should anyone ever have to be ashamed of? I think the only thing I could think of is being mean to someone is something to be ashamed of. But having HIV, I remember some of the people in the very early years who I knew had lost someone. Sometimes it was a brother, sometimes not a parent. And as with many things in ACT UP, we never talked about them. We were too busy trying to save lives. And as a parent myself, I found myself thinking, your parents would be so proud of you. And I get to work with Mathew, who's come to ACT UP this past year and does amazing work and is working to defeat the epidemic. And there are other people in the room who are doing that too. So all I can do is pray for all of you to stay well and be so glad that we can speak openly of these things because it makes a better world. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not going to stand because I'm going to cry. But this is an amazing panel, and I did not lose a parent to HIV, but Kia's mom, very much like my mom. I've known Kia since I was 5 years old, my first and only friend for a while. And I saw her mom maybe like a month or two before she passed away. So this is the first time that I'm witnessing her publicly speak about it. And it's the first time that I can publicly say that I'm proud of you. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I just had a question. It seems like a lot of the conversations that have been happening here tonight center around like not being able to be out about HIV and like how that's hard and has like. I'm just wondering about what kind of like microaggressions you experience or what kind of language or things like help maintain like being in the closet with HIV or like not being able to speak about it openly.
I can talk about that. So as a queer person and a gay man, which can, anyway, navigating, I guess, how am I going to say that? I don't know. I'll just say it, navigating fucking in New York in 2014, or navigating the sexual landscape in New York City in 2014. There are so many, I feel like, microaggressions in the gay community that everyone hears kind of every day, and it's actually, I feel like, intensified with the advent of like online and like hookup culture, and just like because it's so easy. And I wrote a piece about it in Huffington Post. If anyone's read it, it's called like "Is Discrimination on Grindr Killing Gay Sex?" And one of the things that I was talking about was like, like when we talk about whatever, there's like probably like a Lifetime movie on it, like online bullying or like whatever, like digital bullying. It's so easy to do that because you don't have to see the person's face when you do it. You can just say words and then you don't have to, like, I think this generation is losing what it means to bully because like you don't see someone cry or you don't see someone like when they have a sad face because you've hurt their feelings, and they don't have to feel like bully's remorse or feel bad or know what it means, like, to feel shame for being mean. So when you write like in your Grindr profile or even in a dating profile or in your Tinder profile, before you swipe to the left on that person, if you read like I'm clean or DDF or, like neg UB2 or no Asians or no fat people, because, you know, we give good love. I'm just saying. But like, it's just like, it's so easy. So I think that microaggressions are on the rise because they've become easier and easier to do and go unchecked, because people have their own digital real estate on their Facebook or on their Grindr or Tinder or whatever, and like no one checks it because they think like, this is my profile, I'll put what I want, and if I don't want to sleep with someone with HIV, that's my right, so I'm gonna just filter this whole thing out. And that's I think a way that right now we kind of facilitate microaggressions so much easier, or they're so much more easily tolerated.
I think it's interesting using the word clean. That is something that like I've been thinking about a lot. You know, I took someone to get an HIV test recently, and they came back and was like, "Oh, you're negative. Oh, you're clean. Oh, yay, we're all happy." And I'm like, "Well, if you're clean, then what does that make me? Does that make me dirty?" Like, so just thinking about that and that kind of use of language, like, I don't know, just something on my mind.
Thank you. In the corner, back corner.
Hi. Can you hear me, everyone?
That mic.
Hey, Mama.
Hey, love. I just wanted to say thank you to the host, to the space, for the exhibition, and for, I guess, a space in which we can have a beautiful moment to talk about and sort of, I guess, come out about losing family members, parents, to HIV and AIDS, because there are so many other traumatic spaces in which coming out or revealing or speaking about how HIV has affected any number of us is simultaneously occurring. And so, like, I was sitting here trying to think about like ways in which I can relate, and I like forgot. My memory has a way of, like, I have really selective memory. And I forgot that, like, maybe 6 years ago, a family member, a cousin of mine, it was revealed that he had HIV. And it was an incredibly traumatic experience because he didn't reveal it. It was sort of like, like his wife, but there was like all of this anger and trauma, microaggressions, and you know, so I just wanted to thank us and you know, just everyone present for honoring this space to exist.
Thank you.
Right here.
Hi. To all three of you, what a legacy you are to your parents. And I don't know Mathew or Alysia, but I do know Kia. I've known Kia since my daughter, and she started at school at PPAS when they were 10, 11 years old. And it is, I couldn't be prouder. Like, me looking at you right now, this is your mother looking at you through me. I'm so incredibly proud of you and all that you've accomplished and all that you continue to do and fight for. And Kwan would be so very proud of you. And every day, every time I walk by PPAS, my left shoe comes untied, and I know it is your mother reminding me that she is there. So I thank all of you, incredible experiences that all of you have shared, so brave and wonderful, and to know that you guys are out there fighting and just really exposing this as it's not that bad. We're living. You know, when I was in college, all of my gay friends died from this, and we didn't know what it was. It was just, they were getting sick. It didn't have a name until about 6 years after everybody started getting sick and dying, before we called it AIDS. So we've come a long way, but we have a very, very long road, and to see everybody in this room, this is only a microcosm of the macrocosm, and we're on our way. And it's because of these 3 brave people and so many more. So don't be afraid to come out and share your experience. It's the legacy that carries on, like these 3 people. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, in the back row.
Hi. So my brother died of AIDS in 90. Oh, everybody turn around to look at me. Hi. He died of AIDS in 1992, and it was about 3 months before I was born. So I never really had obviously I didn't have a relationship with him, but I always kind of had a relationship with him in a way because he was gay and my father was very homophobic. And as I grew up, I was coming into my queer identity and understanding what that meant, and also trying to find some commonality between myself and other people in my family who are gay, which is just about him and me, at this point. But so my question, I guess, is what are your thoughts or opinions, or even something about your own journey if you identify that way, or any kind of relationship. Okay, hold on. My question is about what is your thoughts on intersectionality between different identities, how they play out into having AIDS and being queer also, or being queer and fat, or being queer and a person of color, and what those things mean, and or what your thoughts of what your thoughts are on those things. I know that's a really big question, but yeah, okay.
Well, thank you for your question. I think one thing I'd want to say, one thing that I wrote about that I think kind of goes to what you're saying is that, like, my father and I, if we were being, like, categorized by the CDC, we're, like, 2 completely different risk categories, but, like, we're also completely different identities, like, but that HIV, like, looking at it sometimes when I think about it, like, links us. Like, he was a heterosexual drug user living in the Lower East Side, one of the epicenters of the epidemic in New York City in the 70s. And he was also, like, he was living in the projects. He was of a lower socioeconomic status, and and then I'm, like, a queer person of color who has other, like, not comorbidities, but, like, other illnesses, who deals with health. Like, I'm a diabetic and I have other health issues. And so I think about, like, what it means to value ourselves. Like, I often think about, like, what it means to value a life, and, like, what it means to like be how love, like I was talking about love as a form of action, like how actively loving people and, like, putting value on people's lives kind of, like, intervenes in this narrative that, like, people of color's lives don't matter, or that people who are not a certain, like, hegemonic thing matter. So, like, loving myself is a form of loving my father. It's a form of, like, loving people who are high at risk for HIV, or, like, love it's. And this is kind of go off topic, but, like, one of the things that I've been thinking about is, like, how in a way I feel like I feel blessed because I got to love my father and then know that he had HIV, because, like, I didn't know that my whole life I was, like, hugging and kissing, and, like, when I was young, like, showering off of the water of someone who had HIV. Like, I had interacted with him every way that, like, a boy child interacts with their male father, and, like, just, like, showering and, like, swimming and everything that, like, people don't want to do. So I feel blessed in a way, like, it taught me, like, this whole time I was interacting with someone who had HIV, and I didn't know it, and I loved them, and they loved me, and they were this nuanced, complicated person. And so everyone living with HIV, to me, I look at and I see my father. Like, I'm like, you are this nuanced, complicated person who showered with their mother or showered with their son or child, and held them and loved them, and, like, gave them too many Oreo cookies when they came home with an A report card, which I did often. And so, like, we all have our nuances and our complications, and that was, like, a blessing that I feel like I have now from knowing my father.
My father died in 1992, so I've spent half my life without him. Because he raised me on his own, I didn't have any siblings. I felt very much of his world, even though I was in his world, but after he died, I ceased to be in his world, but I still felt of his world. And what I mean by that is I identify as straight, and I live a very straight way, but I feel this, like my heritage is queer. You know, the way some people might feel, you know, they have an Italian heritage or, you know, Puerto Rican heritage. I feel I have this queer heritage. And it's one I'm very proud of, and it's one I want to understand, and it's one that I feel comfortable in. But it's not one that when people see me, they see me as part of that. And I recognize that you know, like there's privileges, I'm being white and straight and sort of fitting in. But at the same time, like I feel like the queer community is my people, and I want to find a way to be connected still. Because after my father died, and I moved from San Francisco to New York, and I didn't know anyone who knew him anymore. And I needed to move away because I felt like my whole life, my burgeoning adulthood was all wrapped up with being his daughter. Like I couldn't grow up because I had to take care of him and be, you know, take care of your parent. And then after he died, I'm like, I'm going to be my own person. I'm going to move to New York. But like I was away from his world, and I didn't know his people. And I felt very cut off. And I felt like no one could remember him. But also no one remembered AIDS. You know, I didn't know anyone who had been impacted by it. And it was such a strange, isolating experience. And writing the book was a way of reaching out and connecting, not only in the writing of it and like learning about my queer heritage, you know, and like the forefathers and the people who fought on the streets and like these, you know, people who fought for rights that I feel proud in a way to be related to, even though I'm not related by blood. I feel this relation. Yeah, so I I feel now like I'm connected with that again, and also meeting people who've had that experience that I didn't know how to find before until I basically put something out there like a signal, being like, this is my experience, and everyone light up and be like, that's fine too. They found me. Like I didn't know how to find people who could relate, and now I feel kind of like found. That's a really expansive experience to think like, wow, you know, I'm 40 and I'm like, it's like a rebirth. And to think that I can connect and this could be another chapter. So, yeah, that's what I have to say on that.
Great, welcome back.
Thanks.
In the corner over there. There's two people there. Yeah.
My name's John Benelli. Absolutely beautiful panel. I just was struck sitting here. I didn't lose a parent to AIDS, but thinking what Andy said, the angels in the room, I remember in my 20s losing many of my alternative family mentors and people who were in their 40s when I was in my 20s, or that loss of almost the alternative parents in a way. That in terms of building a bridge to this, I mean, that feeling keeps coming up. The other thing that's running through my mind is with all of this growing hate toward queer people globally and in Arizona, I kept feeling like your stories could penetrate in a very different way to the humanity of, because they're portraying us in a certain light, but your stories can maybe reach people in a totally different way. And I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
I'll be really brief, but I'm kind of amazed. Like, I don't know, like, my father was such a so beautifully, like, humble person, and just, like, he had no airs about him, and he just like I said, loved to dance. Like his favorite thing was to dance while cooking, and to me to this day, like dancing and cooking are the same thing. And I don't know what that says. I don't know, but so like I don't know if he ever thought that like his life would be a subject for I don't even know the word, a subject for like diving into at a New York Public Library panel. Like I don't know if he if that was a thought in his mind. Same way like I don't know if he thought that like you would be able to Google his picture or anything like that. Like, and I think about that when I speak about him. Like I want to do justice to his story, and I want to do justice to him because there were injustices done to him, and so I want to do justice to him. So like when I was reading his story, I just like thinking about like there are now, you know, my father was someone who my mom always says everyone knew him. They were on a road trip to Arizona actually, and he was in an Arizona rest stop, and he met someone he knew and had a conversation, and my mom said he was everyone's best friend. And like I'm kind of happy that like more people know my father's name because he would have loved that. So
I'm trying to create the space to have education opportunities, to have spaces for people who are living with it who are younger to be able to talk about these things because they don't exist, and that's a problem, a really big problem. So you know, when we can talk later, and you know, and all these things, but yeah, it's.
Can I just suggest going to the Audre Lorde Project and asking for space to meet there? Because I think it's the kind of thing they'd be really open to.
Fierce.
And fierce.
Yeah, I think you should brag about the art that you do in the groups that you have created.
Oh, bragging. Well, I recently started a collective called Grenades. One of my fellow Grenades members is here. Yes. Ow, I just hit myself in the mouth with the thing. Ow, awkward. But yeah, we created this collective because we were interested in reaching this age range, which is like, you know, such a problem. Like 15 to 24 is like a huge problem with infection rates. And that's like the most people that are not getting the information. So we decided to create our own collective and make our own work that is geared towards that generation of children that are just not aware of, like, they're just not aware. And so everything we're doing is influenced like by popular culture, pop art, by things that are like really interesting right now. And I think, you know, what my real goal is, you know, I want to do this program with New York City Public Library to get the conversation started with these kids that are 12 to 19 years old. And in the conversation, we'll talk about what is HIV, what is AIDS, you know, what are all these things, talk about these kind of politics, then show them all the kind of, you know, work that's out there, which is there's not a lot of current work that is out there, and say what's problematic and what's good about this, or what do we like and what do we not like, and let's make new work. Let's create new things so that we can keep kind of this cycle of, you know, spreading the message out there, because it's not being heard. People aren't talking about it anymore. Like it's like, oh my God, yeah, AIDS, yeah, that was that thing that happened in the 80s and the 90s, and yeah, like now it's kind of okay, and like all these kind of things. No, we need to talk about it. We need to have conversations. So that's some stuff that Grenades is doing, and then my own personal work is just me being out and loud about, you know, being positive and living a fabulous life. And, you know, I'm just so happy, like, so many people in this room I know from, like, raise your hand if you know me. Yes! You see, almost this whole room knows me. So that goes to show you that I have a lot of support behind me. And thank you all for being here.
Okay. And who else would like to speak?
It's all a performance.
Yeah. What about in the back row? White T-shirt. No, you. Yeah, you.
Oh, hey, boo.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, hey, boo.
Hey. I also know Kia. And it's. I'm sitting here and I'm thinking when I last sat in on a panel like this and talked about HIV and AIDS, and I think it was in high school. I went to a small liberal arts school where you would think these conversations happen, and we didn't talk about it. And I remember in 9th grade, those days when like you first start having your crush and whatever, and we had to sign a consent form to go to a discussion on health. And I remember, yeah, we're going to go to this health thing, like 3 periods of free time, like listening to someone talk about something about health. And then there's like a PowerPoint with, all right, this is Africa. This is what's going on in Africa. 300,000 people. You know, okay, whatever. Then towards the end, I don't even know if it was towards the end, the gentleman who was holding this discussion had several questions that led up to, is anyone in this room infected with HIV or AIDS? And people weren't really listening, like whatever. And the only person who stood up in a crowd of, I don't know, how many was it, like 400 students, was Kia.
This was like the 8th grade or the 7th grade.
Yeah, it was
this wasn't even
eighth
the 9th grade.
Eighth grade. That's why we had a consent form. And that's when all of us looked at each other and were like, whoa, this is real. This thing that we were trying to like talk is happening in Africa is actually amongst us. Like, you know, this thing that we're saying is not in our backyard. It's so far from us. It's here. And I think putting a face to that and having collectors, what was it? Recollectors is so important because we think it's not happening around us. And we are okay with dismissing it. And today, yeah, the whole Arizona thing, I don't know. But it's not in New York, so that's fine. Like, as long as it's like somewhere else. And I don't know. I think panels like this should continue, and they have to happen. And we have to spread the word and use social media and our Facebooks and share and be open, because if we're not going to talk about this for another 10 years, and then I'll come to one of these panels and I'll like, oh, well, the last time it was, I think I was like 23, you know, and it was a good panel. It was Tuesday afternoon. But yeah, I'm thankful, and thank you everyone for speaking, and this is so important, and thank you everyone who stood up and talked about your families passing away, and I'm so sorry, but we're going to rise up, and we're going to spread the word. All right.
I love you, Feeny. I love you.
Really quick before we get to the next person, I just wanted to say, like, because a lot of people are bringing up Arizona, like, obviously that's like about gay people and stuff like that, but like we weren't that far from quarantining people with HIV in this country, and like HIV criminalization laws right now in the country are like fucking going crazy. So so like I know we're talking about gay laws about gays, and that is very, very important because like hello, but like we also do need to talk about HIV criminalization laws, and I encourage everyone in this room to like go to zeroproject.com or
come on Friday night to the
come Monday night to the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual Community Center, Transgender Center on 13th Street. ACT UP meets every Monday night at 7 o'clock, and the kind of group that needs to exist for your son and for all the people you care about and for yourselves will make it happen there.
And yeah, so I just wanted to really bring up, because we were talking about legal stuff, and I think people living with HIV also have very specific legal concerns, and so I encourage everyone to just like inform themselves.
Hi. Is this on? Yeah. Okay. It's really low. Maybe I'm just really loud. I just wanna. So I work at Fierce. I know somebody, RJ, you shouted out Fierce. Hey, boo. And so our whole building is the Miss Major J. Toole building, and it's a bunch of social justice orgs. And I want to help y'all create that space for young people. And I think it's very, very fucking important to not leave young people behind in this movement. And so whatever help you need, whoever I got to talk to make this happen, let's make it happen. Let's talk afterwards. And yeah.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, two last comments. Ryan.
And hi, I'm Ryan. Sarah, my question is actually for you. You mentioned in your introduction that, and you've written about this, something you bring attention to is that there hasn't been an organized movement in the United States for children of people who've died of AIDS to ask the government to take accountability for this.
Right.
And I'm just wondering, how would you envision that happening, or what would need to happen?
Thank you for asking, and I didn't pay you to ask me that, did I?
No, but I love this question. It's important.
I have a vision of a class action suit against the United States government on behalf of people whose parents died of AIDS to demand accountability for the 15 years of government neglect and indifference towards people with HIV. And honestly, it's the only community, it's the only AIDS community that could possibly achieve that goal. Thanks for asking. Naomi?
She's proactive.
I feel like it shouldn't be me that has the last word, because people here are much more deeply affected than I have been. But I was an AIDS social worker from the late 80s until 2008. And so I knew hundreds of people, families and people who died, and many of you did know many people. And a lot of my work was about secrets. I was constantly talking to people about the various secrets that they were holding from each other, from the rest of their families, from their neighborhood, whatever. And the fact that you're talking about, and you've been working on for a long time, breaking open the secrets, I feel, I so much appreciate that you're doing that, because that's crucial for us to really change the situation. So thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So let's end on that note. No more secrets. And a lot of people have to talk to each other. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, and thank you.
Everybody stand up and stay where you are so we can take a picture on Instagram if somebody can.
Yeah.
So everyone knows that y'all came out to
Yeah, someone's grabbing the phone. And while you're doing that, there's an email list going around. Please feel free to put your email on the list, and then Visual Aids is going to hook up with that lovely person in the back who offered the J Tool building, and we'll get something going on. So everyone get their picture face on.
All right, everybody, on the count of 3, everyone needs to clap like we did something super serious.